Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for Culturati Live on Emotional Fitness as a Business Imperative. I'm Misty Wild, COO of Culturati. For those new to us, Culturati convenes CEOs, CHROs, founders, scholars, investors, and operators for candid conversations around leadership, culture, trust, AI, and the future of work. Today builds on Culturati Summit 2026 with neuroscientist Paul J. exploring how trust, emotional regulation, and physiological readiness influence the way people think, connect, and perform at work. Drawing from decades of research on oxytocin, human connection, and organizational performance, Paul will unpack why emotionally fit teams are better equipped to navigate stress, build trust quickly, retain engagement, and make sound decisions in complex environments. And before I get into his formal bio, I have to brag on Paul because this started last fall with Eugene and I talking at length about trust and its place in organizations and how difficult it is these days to really sustain that. And so I was doing quite a bit of research around it for On Culture and for our conversations, and Paul's name kept coming up, and I was like, I'm just going to shoot my shot here. I sent him a LinkedIn request and sent a message to him saying, what do you have going on right now? What are you working on? And Paul, being the delightful soul that he is, responded back, jumped on a Zoom with Eugene and I, and the rest is history. He joined us for an advisory gathering last fall, and then at Summit this year, he did both a keynote and a breakout. So, Paul, thank you so much for that. Um, and then his formal bio, which is quite impressive. Dr. Paul J. is a distinguished university professor at Claremont Graduate University and is ranked in the top 0.3% of most cited scientists with over 200 published papers and more than 22,000 citations. Paul's 2 decades of research have taken him from the Pentagon to Fortune 500, Fortune 50 boardrooms to the rainforest of Papua New Guinea. I need to hear that story. He has written 4 general audience books and is a regular TED speaker. His newest book is The Little Book of Happiness, a scientific approach to living better. Paul is also a 4-time tech entrepreneur. His current company, Immersion Neuroscience, is a software platform that allows anyone to measure what the brain loves in real time to improve outcomes in entertainment, education, and training, and emotional wellness. And I will slide in there the 6 app, which I hope he talks about because it's super, super cool. He frequently appears in the media in such places as Good Morning America, Dr. Phil, Fox and Friends, and ABC Evening News. And his work has been reported in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Time, The Economist, Scientific American, Fast Company, Forbes, HBR, and various podcasts. Fun fact, he is a member of the Screen Actors Guild and has created dialogue for 2 movies. Paul, we're grateful to have you back with the Culturati community. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Misty. Wow, what a nice introduction. Um, yeah, I'm happy to be here. All of my work really is about developing knowledge and technology so people can live longer, happy lives. And a lot of our life, obviously, is spent at work. So how do we really organize the humans so that organizations are sustainable, which requires that humans are sustainable. So that's really the work I've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years. I've got some slides to show, maybe half an hour or so, and we have plenty of time for questions. I really want to start with getting an understanding of the foundations for the kind of problem I'm interested in solving. Written a bunch of books, as Misty said, and you can obviously get much more information in the books, but happy to begin sharing here. Contact info, feel free to shoot me a message on X or wherever. Um, so let's start with the source of the problem, in my view. Looking at labor shortages that are forecasted for this coming year. This is kind of shocking, right? We're in an extraordinarily low unemployment rate, although we have some interesting kind of layoffs happening. They claim because of AI. It could be from overhiring during COVID times. I'm not sure, but we do see companies shedding, particularly white collar jobs. We're also seeing these labor shortages in a lot of sectors, and we have to sort of think about, what that means. If we're in, this labor shortage world, and as you know, the U.S. has been below replacement fertility since 2010. almost the entire middle income and above every country is below replacement fertility. So we're really running short on humans. And as you all know, immigration is very complicated. So I don't think we're going to be importing a lot more humans, at least for the short term, to fill these labor shortages. So in my view, it means we've really got to invest in human beings who are, until our robot overlords take over, who are still those who are creating value within organizations and creating value for those customers. Ah, too quick on the mouse. Um, Similar kind of shortages. This is data for Europe. We're seeing shortages across a lot of different areas. Obviously, the European economic system, while these are capitalist economies, are much more large government, much more heavily regulated, and things like healthcare in particular have much lower salaries. So there's, some reason why you see shortages. But yet we see this across fields. I think, both, white collar work and at least what's traditionally been called blue collar work. So, I think we have to think about how to create environments where people can benefit from the work they're doing, from the service they're giving to other people, and again, build sustainable organizations. So here's some recent data on the fertility rate. So as most people know, the replacement rate is 2.1 births per woman, zero point 0.1 because some people don't make it to reproductive age, and so you can see we by 2010 we were below that, and had some periods below that as well. So um, that doesn't look like it's going to change. Some people know some of the lowest birth rates in the world are in South Korea. Japan is extremely low. I was in Japan for a week recently and saw one baby. I was just shocked, like, oh my gosh, there's a lady with a stroller. So we really have to think about what we do to help humans thrive and sustain our economies. Unemployment rates quite low. I mean, again, obviously, varies with the business cycle. So anyway, that's I think the source of the problem. You guys are aware of this. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but that's why I'm concerned about the humans. And at the same time, we're seeing high levels of burnout. This is data from Gallup. But at least some of the time, people are burnt out at work. Perhaps not surprising. Um, by the way, people should not be happy at work. They should be satisfied at the end of the day. So we look at the relationship between happiness and productivity. It's the causal link. In lots of research, looks like productive people are happy. It's not that happy people are more productive. I want you to be on at work. I don't want you to be happy. I want you to be focused. I want you to be feeling like you're doing something important. We're going to talk a bit about that. So again, feeling sometimes burnout doesn't bother me a ton, but people who are consistently burnout, that's worrisome. And we're seeing this reflected in mental health disorders. A lot of those, but not exclusively, are in the higher income countries. So we've got to really think about, what's happening. What are we doing if we're spending 8 or 10 or sometimes more hours a day at work? Is that allowing us to have a thriving population? Uh, so again, I'm concerned about the fertility for lots of reasons, but societies are just not built for shrinking populations. Can we adapt to that? Sure, but things like Social Security, healthcare expenditures, all that really depends on growing populations, which we don't have. And then the next thing that worries me is again this sort of secondary indicator of poor emotional health, which is metabolic disorders, diabetes, obesity. And so I think that for the US, the regional effects are kind of interesting here. Uh, I don't have a strong hypothesis on why these regional effects occur. You may have your own. I don't want to be taking shots at any part of different parts of the country, but I think it is interesting. This is really interesting data. So as Missy said, I've done a lot of work on the underlying neurobiology of trust, and we'll come back to that. So when I think about um, of, organizations that effectively allow humans to thrive, employees to thrive, and are highly productive and profitable, anytime you put humans together, you're going to have friction. That's just normal. Um, and I think of trust as this lubricant that reduces friction, right? If I know Eugene, and I work with him. And then one day he's always been nice to me. One day he's super cranky with me. Doesn't mean that much. He's having a bad day, whatever, or I'm cranky with him. Um, right. But, if I don't have trust in him, if I don't understand why he's here, who he is, what his goals are, then it's actually more difficult to work. That friction is higher. So I think this kind of gradient we see on trust levels across different demographic groups is kind of worrisome. Now, will the Gen Z folks develop greater trust as they advance in their careers or just get older? Perhaps. I mean, that's what the graph sort of suggests, although it's, again, cross age groups, not longitudinal. But it does worry me because of that friction, right? And friction, as most of the number one reason people give for quitting their jobs is not to make more money. It's because they don't like the people they work with. In particular, office, the number one issue is the boss, but also their colleagues. And so if I have friction with those colleagues, if I don't feel like I can trust them, if I am looking over my shoulder at work, my job satisfaction is going to be lower, but also we have shown, and many other groups have shown as well, productivity is lower. So there's this kind of potential virtuous cycle between job satisfaction, my physical and emotional health, and my ability to continue working. So reduced turnover, higher productivity. That's the kind of virtuous cycle that I want to talk about how to build for the rest of my talk. But again, I think having some data to start out on why we might be worried about this is I think it's a big issue. I don't think this is a small issue. I think it's a fairly big issue. By the way, if you have questions and you want to stick them in the chat, we'll have plenty of time for those. So feel free to fill up the chat now or the question box, wherever it is in Zoom, and we'll certainly get to those. So here's my basic thesis and the thesis for the rest of the talk. Organizations thrive when humans thrive. There may be other factors that cause organizations to thrive. But certainly, if the humans are not thriving, if your turnover is super high, if your customers are unhappy, this is not going to be a sustainable organization. And so, for me, at least in the bias at my work, I want to create a culture in which humans can thrive so that they can put the energy into uh, creating the conditions for that organization to thrive. And so, when we think about work, it's not only the cognitive component, but there's an emotional labor that goes into work. If you love what you do, if it's a joy for you, if it's hard but doable, if you get the satisfaction from doing your job, if you get to go home and tell your family or your roommate or your best friend about the cool thing you did at work today, that's a different ball game than my boss yelled at me for an hour and I just wanted to quit my job, right? That's not effective. I was talking to a friend of mine, very senior person at one of the big five tech companies, and I won't mention which one. And she told me that regularly people came into her office crying. And I said, well, a couple of sniffles. She goes, no, I mean like for an hour, they're just sobbing, right? I think that's not a sustainable organization. I think it's there's a moral injury you're doing to people. There certainly is a measurable emotional injury you're doing to people. And the excitement, the passion for the job is being dissipated by the unachievable goals or abusive behavior of supervisors. So to me, that's not a sustainable organization. And by the way, you again may know this data, but for a professional, it's between 100% and 150% of annual salary to replace someone who quits. So again, I'm a cheap bastard. Eugene will tell you I'm a cheap, cheap guy. And I hate to spend money on having to hire new people who quit for dumb reasons, right? Because a supervisor is abusive or because, goals are so impossible to reach that I'm just frustrated or I'm working 14, 15-hour days. Right? That's not sustainable, again, for the humans. It's too costly for the organization. So I think thinking about sustainability, long-term profitability, reduction in healthcare costs. The the amount we're spending on I didn't bring data on this, but the amount we're spending on mental health costs for employees has been going up and up and up every year. So again, to me, not an effective use of money if I can solve this in some other way. So what does that mean to thrive? It means that people are fully engaged in life. They are exceeding goals, performing tasks, they're doing things well. So we have been sold this sort of bill of goods that stress is bad. And I want to make the case today that stress is good. Challenge stress is good. So chronic stress is bad if you don't sleep well, if you can't stop thinking about the project you're working on, if you don't feel like you can, take time off and uh, socialize or exercise. That's chronic stress. But if you have a big project due in 3 weeks, and you've got to really grind it out and you've got to, solve some major problems, that's challenge stress. So for many of us, those challenge stresses are time limited and they give us that satisfaction from from really doing something, again, hard but achievable. So I'm against the word wellness because I think it sets the bar too low. If I'm just focusing on my own or my employees' wellness, then if something happens, then they're below the bar and they're unwell. So I'd rather focus on thriving or flourishing, really setting the bar high so that individuals who work at this organization are thriving professionally, they're thriving emotionally, and in the best case, thriving spiritually, whatever that means for individuals, right? So I think if you have those, you have true, sustainable, and likely profitable organizations because you're saving so much money, number one, on turnover, you're saving money on healthcare costs, and you're not losing all of that institutional knowledge that employees who have been working there for years have. So there are five pillars to thriving in the published research: diet, exercise, sleep, having a rich social life, and having a sense of purpose and acting on it. So the first three are obvious and well known: eating a healthy diet, getting enough sleep, and having regular exercise. And by the way, regular doesn't mean a lot. Uh, the data show that even 20 minutes a day of walking is actually fairly, it's actually quite good. Uh, 30 minutes is better and a little more cardiovascularly challenging exercise is even better. But you can get up in the morning. What I do is because I have dogs, I get up, I make coffee, and I just walk for a couple miles first thing in the morning. If it's light, if it's dark, if it's raining, unless it's a big storm. So I just bang out they have the 2 miles is about 40 minutes, right? So I'll get 40, 45 minutes of walking first thing in the morning. So I bang that thing out, and then try to take another break in the afternoon and do a shorter walk. So I'm going to focus here, since one, two, and three are well known, on four and five. So recent research out of Oxford University has shown that about 50% of people's happiness is due to having a rich social life. So I've asked my friend Misty how rich her social life is. Is it a six? Is it a three? What's the comparison there? So if a lot of our happiness, and this is really more like long-term satisfaction, flourishing, is due to having a rich social life, I can't do anything with that if I can't measure it. So we're going to get to in a couple minutes why we've shown that that is measurable. And if you have six or more of these key moments a day in a well-defined neurologic sense, then you're really thriving. So let me talk about purpose just for a sec here. We're going to focus much more on the social component in a minute. Um, Purpose is besides work and family, what gives you energy? What gets you excited in the morning or on the weekend? Is it rock climbing? Is it volunteering in your kid's school? Is it hiking? So almost all those things are social. If I want to be a great rock climber, well, I might train by myself sometimes, but I'm in a gym or I'm in a climbing location. I'm training with other people, right? So that purpose component is actually very important. And my lab and others have done lots of research on having a sense of purpose outside of work, but also at work, knowing why our organization exists is highly motivating, right? That's the why. Um, I overlapped Claremont Graduate University with, I think, one of the two great management gurus of the 20th century, Peter Drucker. And Peter wrote, I don't know, in the 70s probably, that every organization's purpose is to improve people's lives. And in my own research, I found that when employees know how their organization improves lives, they are substantially more productive. And we've run laboratory experiments measuring brain activity with and without a purpose of why people are doing what they're doing. And when people know their purpose, they're so much more productive. They're so much more satisfied. Again, that productivity makes me happy, makes me feel satisfied with my jobs. So that sense of purpose, while it can be important outside of life, so you have something besides work and family, it's important to have that sense of purpose, but also within the organization, understanding the larger purpose, why we're actually getting paid, whether you're a nonprofit, for-profit, or government, at some level, I think Drucker's right. You are, uh, getting income in some level because you're making people's lives better. And when that is what I call a lived purpose, almost all employees know what it is. It's on the tip of the tongue. It's actually really important. So it gives us again that sense of the larger social benefit of this organization. So anyway, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on purpose. I spent enough time here. I do want to talk more about happiness. Of course, what's interesting about these five pillars is that they are not statistically independent, right? So people who are happy tend to be healthier. They tend to also live longer. And so if I can focus on that leverage point of improving happiness, I'm getting some of the other factors almost for free, and certainly as a kind of a additional benefit. So again, I'm a cheap guy. I don't want to pay for employee healthcare expenditures if I don't have to. I want to give people opportunity to live longer and healthier, and that's just a good thing. So it seems like we should be experts in relationships, right? We are in a real neuroanatomical sense, we are social creatures. We only thrive when we're around other people. And yet, of course, relationships are complicated, right? Even those who we are in our families, who we love, our romantic partners, will have a lot of friction with them sometimes. They know us so well, sometimes they know how to induce that friction. So we've got to be embedded in community. And I think what's interesting for this talk is that one of those embedded communities is our work community, right? So we are set up. It's absolutely totally natural given our brain structure to put a bunch of humans in an office and give them projects to work on. It's not exploitative. It's not unusual. It's exactly what our brains are set up to do and what we've done through eons. So first takeaway is it's totally normal to have a bunch of strangers, I mean, let's see, genetically unrelated individuals working on joint projects. It's totally normal for humans. It's normal for some other animals as well. But it's natural. So we like to be in community. Um, to the extent that community is supportive, has higher trust, allows us to be physically and emotionally healthy, that communities can be more effective at doing that work. And indeed, the data show that individuals who are lonely at work are less productive. No surprise there, right? Because our work, ultimately, even if you're a solo practitioner or a gig worker, we're always working with other people, clients or other collaborators. So as Misty kind of suggested in her intro, I spent a lot of time measuring brain activity while people do all kinds of different tasks and really focused in an area called behavioral neuroscience. So I'm not really interested in people's feelings or their intentions. I'm interested in observing their behavior and understanding the brain activity that produces that behavior. So if I have that mapping from brain to behavior, then I'm able to reverse engineer solutions. How might I activate this brain activity in order to improve, change, inhibit a particular behavior? So uh, if liking or intentions or feelings were predictive, I would certainly use those, but they're very poorly predictive because they're just poorly defined. Brain activity um, has a natural baseline. So because the brain is so energy hungry to run, takes about between 20 and 30% of your calories to run, it wants to idle. And so we see big metabolic investments in activities, particularly in a network that my research identified which is how the brain values social emotional experiences. I've called this network immersion. We see this big spike in immersion. It's like, oh, this is really valuable to me. The brain's investing those metabolic resources in order to further its goals. And those goals, again, ultimately are flourishing. It's being embedded in a community, having tasks to do that are generate satisfaction and forming relationships. And so, again, that's the core of getting this 50% of that core pillar four of thriving to activate at work. So I want to show you a brief video of one of these experiments. So we have now developed wearable technologies, but in my lab, we typically start with measures of blood draws so that we can look at changes in neurochemicals. So if I know which neurochemicals are active in a task, then we can optimize the measurement of brain activity in regions of the brain that have high densities of receptors for those neurochemicals. That's a lot of words. If we know the chemical factors and we know where to look for the neuroelectrical factors, that's the short answer. So I'm going to play this video. It runs about 2 minutes. I should say this was for a Danish chocolate company. So it's beautifully filmed, a very well-known filmmaker in Denmark. And whenever I'm asked to do commercial work, like for TV, I always say like, I'm not an actor. I can't memorize lines, but I'm a super nerdy scientist. And if you fund an experiment for me, I can certainly talk about that enthusiastically. So you'll see this experiment that we jointly designed and they paid for and ran. And these are real humans and they're slightly being tortured by me. But let's watch it and then we can talk about it a little bit.
Det siger mig ikke noget, hvad I sagde. Jeg springer over den. Altså, den er mig fløjtende ligegyldig. Det er jo lidt bare en organsk højtid. Men kan du huske, hvornår du sidst har gjort noget rart for hende? Nej, det kan jeg faktisk ikke. Ikke sådan lige på stående fod. Og det er et spørgsmål. I'm very excited about this. This experiment has never been done before. Hi, come on in. Dr. Zach, we're going to take a little blood from your arm. We'll take 2 blood samples from our subjects, one before and one after. We'll measure the change in oxytocin to see if people actually became happier. Oxytocin is sometimes called the love molecule. Oxytocin makes us happier, increases erections, and produces more powerful orgasms. This is really powerful stuff. Jeg skulle fortælle dig, hvorfor jeg elsker dig. Så det må jeg jo gøre. Jeg elsker dig, fordi du er så speciel. Du bare er den, du er. Du tænker på andre mennesker end dig selv. De empatiske evner overstiger alt andet, jeg nogensinde har set. Jeg har taget mig i den arme, siden vi måttes. Det gør mig godt, om jeg er god dejlig. Uden min partner. The most remarkable thing is the more we give, the more oxytocin we produce. påvirker mig. Jeg bliver da selv faktisk et gladere menneske. So if you claim not to like Valentine's Day, the blood proves that it'll make you happier. If you still don't like it, fair enough. Do it some other day.
So the sort of key of that experiment is that there is this reciprocal relationship neurochemically. When someone is kind to us, our brains release oxytocin and motivate us to be kind back to them. So from a work perspective, this and based on lots of other research I've done and others have done, suggests a kind of a servant leader model is most effective. So we are seeing a reduction in hierarchy in many workplaces. We're seeing a reduction in uh, the status of clothing, right? Wearing the $5,000 Armani suits kind of gone away in most places, even in New York. It's really about connecting to human beings and having that um, value of the relationship, which is normal for humans at work or outside of work. So this is a positron emission tomography image of the activity of this network I've called immersion, which is again how the brain values social emotional experiences. Um, what you should take away from this is that this activation is in the lower
Hey,
parts.
Paul.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to omnipresent drop in, but your audio has dropped. It's hard for us to hear you.
is that better?
A little bit better. Thumbs up, everyone. Thumbs down. Can you say something else?
Let's see. It is
Ah,
prompting me to do something. Is that better?
yes. Now we can hear you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for letting me know. I think I turned up the sound for the video, and then I think Zoom was trying to adjust everything. Um, yeah, so the outer surface of the brain called the cortex is where the kind of higher processing occurs, and those are some of those areas, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, is the areas that we're consciously aware of. But this activation is in the evolutionarily old parts of the brain, well out of uh, our conscious awareness. And therefore, this valuation network for social emotional experiences, which includes what we do at work, is not something we're conscious of. And clearly, doing blood draws at work, although I have done that at some organizations years ago, requires a better kind of technology to empower leaders and employees to measure and manage their own satisfaction at work. And again, I want to push on that satisfaction as a way to improve uh, productivity, job satisfaction, and build sustainable humans and sustainable organizations. So we need some measurement technology. Lucky to have a big behavioral neuroscience lab at Claremont Graduate University with good funding, and we measure brain activity pretty much every way that it's possible to do, and ultimately identified this network I called immersion, which is very accurate at predicting what people do. So what is valued by the brain is what is acted on and remembered. And so we use this measurement technology, I'll tell you about that in a minute, to ask how much social emotional value do people need in order to thrive? And we can measure thriving by looking at people's energy levels, at people's mood. So people with thriving have positive mood and high energy, among other things. And so we started by looking at the elderly. So it turns out that people in retirement homes get lonely, and they get lonely because they have death of friends or spouses. They have a lot of there's a lot of undiagnosed depression in the elderly, undiagnosed because they don't want to complain and they feel like they should just kind of whatever fade into the background. And so we started doing work there, and then ultimately moved into data on businesses. But as Misty kind of forecasted, we showed that if you have six neurologically well-defined key moments a day, so these peak immersion experiences, then you're building up your emotional fitness. And so we developed a free app called Six. I'm going to tell you about it in a minute. In fact, I'm going to give you a QR code. You can use it for free. That just runs in the background and measures neurologic immersion and links to your calendar and your location and helps employees identify those parts of their jobs that give them the most value. Is it working with clients? Is it working with my team? Is it programming by myself? Is it so we really get a chance to understand our unconscious emotional states and how those contribute to our happiness and satisfaction with life. Now, why is it six key moments as opposed to two or 19? I have no idea. I really, there's no theory on this. It's just an empirical finding. But we have a lot of data. Right? This is data coming out every second from your brain, and we can measure this over weeks and months. And I'm going to show you some more data in a minute to demonstrate that. But six is like 10,000 steps for your emotional health. If you can get six or more of these key moments a day, you're building up your capacity to be present and emotionally open. And those are the subjective factors that we see when people are having these key moments. They're fully present. They're able to connect to others, to connect to what they're doing, and they're getting emotional resonance with what they're doing. They're getting the value of that experience emotionally. And again, this is not something you're consciously aware of, but is measurable with technology. So it gives us a language and a measurement tool to talk about emotional health at work. So I think we've got a lot of progress on ensuring that people go home physically healthy. I think by and large, many organizations have failed at sustaining employee emotional health. And again, I'm a very pro-capitalist. I'm pro-America. I want us to be successful. I want companies to be successful. But to me, it starts with ensuring that those individual employees are successful in terms of thriving. This is a free app. There's a premium version, but my goal is to get 1 billion people on the planet to use our free app to have a way to talk about their emotional health in a non-clinical way, right? We have shown that for people who get less than 3 key moments a day, they start having what looks like pre-depressive symptoms. That is, they have low energy and they have a negative mood. But this is not a clinical tool. This is a emotional fitness solution. This is a private data. It doesn't go anywhere. It just lets you learn about yourself. And my goal is to get 1 billion people on the planet to use it. So we do have users on 6 continents, which is very exciting. Uh, I'll get emails from users in Africa, from users all over Asia, and it's a great way to talk about emotional health and building up emotional fitness without having to talk about depression or anxiety or something like that. So for individuals, you need some kind of device where we're hacking into the green PPG laser sensors and applying algorithms to that. So not using any native measures in these apps. So we're not measuring heart rate or heart rate variability. Those do not consistently predict behaviors. But the key part, as I said earlier, is that it links to your calendar and your location. And in the premium version, it has a little sweet little grandma built in that starts to give you advice. It says, hey, the last 2 times you hung out with Misty, you had a key moment. It's been 2 weeks. Go ask Misty out for coffee, right? So that kind of a reminder is something that in our busy lives we forget to do. So it's a great way to learn about your own unconscious emotional states and what you value, and you can lean into those things. To me, I think the superpower is sharing these key moments with people that you trust, right? So I'm going to show you data from a big tech company in a minute that I'm not going to name because I'm NDA'd. But as these things go, it takes forever to get these programs approved. So the wellness guy at this company, his name is Richard. Uh, we got to be friends. He lives in the Bay Area in California, and I'm up there a lot. And so we had dinner and met his wife and hung out. Great guy. It's just a super good guy. And he shares his six data with me. So I don't see what he's doing. I just see how many key moments he's getting. And this super dynamic guy, amazing guy. And so, anyway, I got 60, 70 people who share their data with me and vice versa. And so, recently, well, a couple months ago, I opened my app and I'm checking on my friends and I see he's got one key moment. Well, that's unusual for him. And so, then anyway, the next day I open it up and he's got one key moment. It's kind of unusual. Well, I mean, I don't know. Again, I got a lot of friends, so I'm not going to focus on this guy. The next day I open up, he's got zero key moments. I'm like, that's weird. So I just sent him a text. I'm like, hey, Richard, everything all right? Turns out he was on a vacation with his elderly mother overseas. She fell, broke her shoulder, had to have surgery overseas. I got to fly her home in a cast. He's got to take off work and take care of her. He's having a bad couple of days. And I called him up and said, what can I do to help? Do you have any questions or is there something I can do? Just, having someone check in on you, not in your family, that just says, hey, you're important. You're a friend. I'm here to support you. He said it made all the difference in the world. So I think it's so important that we're on this emotional fitness journey together. So having a language, having a measurement tool, and then having that social layer, I think is how we can push back on all the mental health disorders, the metabolic disorders, all these indicators that we are not thriving, and have a way to do that. So, we do have organizations using this that get anonymized data. So they'll just use this to ensure they're creating emotionally healthy workplaces and cultures. And I think that's an important goal for any organization or any division within an organization. Let's make sure that we have a sustainable workplace where people are going home emotionally healthy. If they're not, again, you have bad days at work, just like I have bad days at home, right? We all do. That's not a big deal. But if people are very low on the value they're getting from experiences, low number of key moments, and we also developed a physiologic measure of psychological safety. And they're so stressed out that they just don't have the bandwidth to be effective. Again, that's the recipe for burnout. That's the recipe for depression. So I think it's really important that we take these things seriously, again, because in my view, we're getting short on humans, and I'm a very pro-human kind of person. So let me just give you some data, and then I'll take some questions. This is for a recent rollout. I think this ran 6 or 7 months. I've forgotten now. This is a fairly large company in California. And so employees got access to the Six app. You can see the usage. Couple interesting things. We look at average neurologic immersion. We see that consistent with the sort of traditional Christian view of Sunday as your day of rest, that people actually were using Sunday as a recovery day. And I think that's very interesting. So again, these are all pretty good values. Again, these data run 0 to 100. So roughly baseline is around 50 for average immersion for all day, plus or minus a couple, depending on what you're doing. But we're seeing, these employees are getting a lot of value from their experiences. Again, most of this is at work. They can use it outside of work, but most of this is being captured at work. We're seeing that the more people use the app, the higher the immersion. So you can see that two ways. One, there could be a selection bias in that people who are happier, more satisfied with their lives, who are thriving, remember to turn the app on. It could be. But because the app has the built-in little grandma AI component, it could be that they're getting this feedback, these nudges to remember to do those things that create value for them, that make them feel emotionally healthy, that give them that positive feedback. So we haven't determined which of those it is, probably a combination of the two. We see slightly higher average immersion in women rather than men. So I think men may need these nudges a bit more. That's a small difference, but it's statistically significant. We're seeing that older people tend to be thriving less in this sample. So again, a lot of observations. So I think that's a true finding. Again, it's highly statistically significant. So this is really interesting, right? This is neurologic data. Yet on self-report, we're seeing more mental health disorders. Again, I'm not in the mental health world. I'm in the thriving world, but more mental health disorders among the young. But neurologically, we're seeing that, at least in this company, that they are having more value from their work experience. Again, this doesn't surprise me. We see lower neurologic immersion for employees who are in the US versus those who are foreign. In this sample, most of the foreign individuals are in Europe. So by and large, these are Europeans. Again, consistent, I think, with everyone's experience has been to Europe, that people enjoy their lives a bit more there. And so I think, the punchline here is people who are emotionally healthy have more energy at work. We also collected survey data on things like satisfaction with life, emotional intelligence. And it doesn't really matter your salary, how long you work there, your education levels. Um, Again, this is not, in some sense, exploitative. It's not that I want you to be emotionally healthy because I want to extract more value from you. It's I want to empower individuals to measure and manage their own emotional health so they're able to continue working, getting the satisfaction of being of service to others, right? Work is always about service to your colleagues, to your customers, and have the job satisfaction and life satisfaction of doing something that's important. So here's the punchline. People who sustain six key moments a day are happy and energetic. That includes being happy at work. I'm pro return to the office, even though I'm working at home today. I think it's really important that we're physically around other individuals. I can tell you about the studies we've done on work from home versus work in the office. But I think, 3 days a week as a minimum in the office, I think is a very good idea. As I mentioned earlier, the causation in most studies shows that it is productive individuals who are happier at work rather than the opposite. Um, the data strongly show that people who are happy at work, have lower turnover, spend less on healthcare, and interestingly, people who are generally happy on average live 3 additional years of life, and those are generally 3 healthy years. So even if you are the most selfish person ever and you just want to live longer, you've got to really invest in relationships, right? That's what we're talking about here is investing in relationships. And my most recent book, The Little Book of Happiness, is really about activities you can do to strengthen relationships of all types, to invest in those relationships so you can gain the benefits of living a longer, happier, and healthier life. And don't take my word for it. There's a QR code for the Six app. It's free. It's totally free. Uh, you can use it almost any wearable that you have. We support fitness wearables, Polar, Whoop, or we don't really care unless they're totally, isolated and you can't get into them. So, with that, I would love to take some questions from the group, questions on the science, questions on the applications. I'm happy to talk more about how organizations are using this. We've worked with police departments. We've worked with the US military, who are all kind of getting religion in the sense that they are concerned about um, running out of humans and the high turnover for people who are not satisfied in their jobs. So, do we have Misty? Should I read the chat, or how should I take questions?
Completely up to you if you want to read the chat, or I can read it to you and jump on. Up to you.
I can see them. I opened up the chat here, so sure, I'll ask some questions. Let's see. Okay, couple here. If stress has a measurable biology, what does the change about how seriously we should take connection at work? Yeah, I think the old business school pitch that there's a work you and a home you, and never the two shall meet is just wrong. I think the data are very clear that from Gallup and others that when you have a strong set of friendships at work with your work colleagues, that you are more productive and happier. Very, very interesting study, 10 years ago, that was reported in HBR out of Harvard, showing that engineers in Silicon Valley who socialized more were more productive. Well, how can that be? Right? So uh, it's because they had formed those relationships. When they were stuck on something, they knew who to talk to. So that's why I'm an advocate for return to work. And also interestingly, we have shown in published research, you guys can find all this, online. Just go to Google Scholar and everything's downloadable. We found that open office plans improve not only emotional health, but people are more productive and they're happier when they have open spaces around them. Even though it's noisier and people are moving around, I think it's very consistent with our evolutionary history. We weren't built to be in small little boxes, that we call offices, even with half walls. So I think was a great question. Um, okay, another question. Um, Missy said, we demoed this at the summit. It was wild. Uh, it's monitored through a wearable. Let's see. And the experiment was tell each other about something they enjoy uh, with another person, what they enjoy doing. Having that motivation to connect to another person um, in the friendly sense is really important. Like when we have, this is why I like return to office. Before you go into a meeting with at work, what do you do? Well, you have a little chit chat beforehand. But when we schedule meetings on Zoom or some other platform, we try to chit chat a little bit, but it's scheduled, so it's not as natural. We don't have that water cooler talk. We don't have, hey, let's go grab lunch, you guys, right? So all that is again building those social ties, creating that social emotional value that we need. And I think that's really important. So again, you can do that remotely. It's just harder. So for teams that are remote, if possible, I recommend that at least once a month you physically get together, meet in a co-working space, meet someplace in the middle. So I think that's a really effective way to sustain those social ties. They're just harder to do when you physically don't see people. A couple of questions here about the role of AI, and I think that's going to be an increasingly interesting component. So, as we sort of become cyborgs, right, we're going to be merging with these machines. Will it improve our social connection or will it reduce it? It is interesting that people say please and thank you to chatbots, right? um, so, I think that we anthropomorphize everything. So I think what we're running experiments now in my lab looking at how people interact with AI and also interact with other people. What is it about AI that may free us up so we have that time to socialize? Is it about AI that reduces our likelihood to ask another person for help or ask them for advice? So I think there was a question here about what's the simplest way to kind of do this, and it's just saying hello. So Misty and Eugene know this story, but some years ago, because I'm interested in social behaviors of humans, and I may be a Martian, I'm just kind of observing what the humans are doing. Um, I started saying hi to people in elevators just to see what would happen, and about half them freak out just a little bit, which somehow makes me happy. And the other half, you have a nice 20 or 30-second conversation with you. So, um, I think just having that genuine interest in other people at work, outside of work for that matter, think of your friends, right? So, I'm at this stage of my life where my kids are out of the house, are young adults, and I've had so much more time now, even though I love my kids to death, at forming friendships. And, even as a whatever later middle-aged adult, I'm really have a great group of guy friends who are just these guys are like brothers. We had so many adventures together. And so, but it just came from, being somewhere and saying hi to people and meeting them and, finding you have joint interests or you live in the same area. I was on a flight home from Texas actually a couple of weeks ago, and guy had an empty seat next to me, like the dream of your flight, right? And the guy sat down next to me at the last minute before they closed the door, and I kind of teased him a little bit, like, you ruined my flight and whatever. We're chatting. This guy's a retired NFL player, uh, lives about 3 miles from me in San Diego. We just chatted the entire flight, exchanged phone numbers. We went to happy hour. Right, great guy, just a super great guy, super dad, got nice kids, and yeah, formed a friendship, right? Does it have to be, we don't have to work together. We just hang out once in a while and whatever, shoot the breeze. And so I think that kind of reaching out is something that we're not seeing in young people who are so used to that interface on the phone. So, Yeah, in real life, who knew it was that important? Okay, we have time for just a couple more questions. I'll try to be efficient. Let's see. Someone asked, what is the difference between young and old? I don't recall. I have graduate students who do all that. Probably median split on the age. I don't remember. Oh, great question from Samir on introverts versus extroverts. So we do not find a difference in the number of key moments by introvert or extrovert, which is kind of surprising. So about 80% of those key moments are social. So I'm an introvert, but I love people. I love being around people. It's just I don't want to be around them 14 hours a day. I might want to be around them 10 hours a day. And so we do find that there are personality types that will have more key moments. So this guy, the tech company, Richard, I mentioned, he has this personality. He is highly agreeable and empathic. So these people have a bigger emotional range and they just have more key moments. And so there are individuals we've seen who will get 12, 14 key moments on a day. Amazing, right? So um, anyway, I think that, there's some personality types there. So what the app does actually is it learns about you over time and it begins to change your threshold. If you're never getting enough key moments, it starts with the population average for what a neurologically key moment means, and then it begins to learn about you and it will change that metric uh, for you. So it'll try to kind of learn about you and then have a more personalized threshold for having a key moment. Okay, let's see. Here's a long question from Eugene. Um, People don't necessarily have to be happy at work, which Eugene doesn't agree with. Awesome. I love to disagree because that means we're going to learn something. But we do want people to thrive. Happiness and thriving is pretty interconnected. Okay, great question, Eugene. Thank you. So happiness is an acute emotional state. So this spike, oh man, I was happy. I just closed a sale. Thriving is this longer term notion, which is, you're right, Eugene, that people who thrive generally have positive mood. So mood is this longer term notion, but they're also engaged in life. They have stronger relationships. So I see of thriving as this larger notion than happiness. But I don't disagree with you, Eugene, of course, since you're a wonderful friend, that I would want to have employees have these spikes of happiness at work. I solved a problem. I made a sale. I helped a colleague. I think those are great. I worked for many years in the early days with the Zappos, which has a famously, quote, happy culture. Zappos, the online shoe seller. And they would have things like Taco Tuesday and sumo wrestling and blow up suits to make the employees happy because they thought they would be more productive. That's not true. Taco Tuesday is great, but that's not the source of thriving. That's just a kind of a freebie. So, in any case, I think we should be kind of careful. Um, Probably Misty and Eugene need to do a wrap up. So I think I'm going to stop there, but I'd be very happy to get emails from folks or messages if you want to shoot me a message. Happy to uh, take more questions if people have them.
Amazing. Paul, thank you so much. You were just such an incredible friend to Culturati. We're so grateful for you. For everyone who joined us today and for those who weren't able to make it, we will be sending this recording and recap out likely tomorrow, and it will be posted on our website and platforms so you can get the goodness out of it anytime you want. But as for us, that's it for now. Thank you so much and hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their week.